Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Little background. I'm 22 female and I'm currently 8 months pregnant with my first child. My partner is 31 male. I work as a secretary on the inpatient ward of a hospital second shift. I started working here when I was 19 and supporting myself through college. Also great benefits, so my co-workers are like family. When I was 4 months pregnant, I told my co-workers, who were very happy for me. All except Patty, fake name. She didn't say anything. After a while, she started being friendly with me, asking about the baby, my health, and my plans for the future. I told her that my partner and I were getting married and moving in together to be a family. Patty didn't like this for some reason and started asking me about my opinions on adoption. I said no, I would never adopt out my child. For a few weeks, Patty gave me the silent treatment. Then one night, after visiting ours, a couple showed up. 40-ish male and 40-ish female. I told them that visiting hours were over and that they could see their family members tomorrow. The woman said, "Oh, we're here to see you. We're so excited to meet you and want to thank you for choosing us to give your baby to." I was dumbfounded and shocked until the woman tried to touch my 6 months pregnant Billy. I screamed so loud all of the nurses came running. The couple tried to explain to the security, nurses, and me that their sister-in-law told them that I was a young mother desperately trying to give up my baby for adoption and chose them. That their sister-in-law promised them my baby since they have been suffering from infertility for years. I told them that I had no intention of giving up my baby and to never come near me again. I also told them that I don't even know their sister-in-law, but they kept insisting that I did. Next night, Patty comes charging up to my desk, screaming at me about how I could treat her brother and sister-in-law like garbage after she helped me with my mistake. I called security, and Patty and her brother and sister-in-law are banned from coming near me or contacting me at work. But I'm 8 months pregnant and scared these crazy entitled people will find me when I deliver and demand my baby. My partner says that it's just hormones and they can't just steal our baby. But I'm terrified. So I decided to get a restraining order as soon as I could. I have had migraines since I was 3 or 4. Sometimes they start slow and sometimes they hit like a hammer. I can be instantly unable to function if they hit quickly. In college, this could be a huge problem. The only available medication just knocked you out, so you didn't care that you hurt and wanted to vomit. My freshman year, 1987, I was at a party for my roommate's boyfriend's birthday. I had never had champagne and didn't know it was a migraine trigger. I took a sip or two of champagne and instantly got a migraine. We were at someone's house about 20 minutes away from the dorm. My roommate didn't want to leave the party, so she arranged for a guy she knew to drive me home. She had no idea what he really was like. She just knew him from a few parties. On the drive that I thought was to my dorm, this guy pulls over on the side of the road in an undeveloped area. No one was around. He tried to harass me and then assaulted me when I kept hitting him, and he then left me on the side of the road. I didn't even know where I was, much less how to get back to the dorm or to the hospital. After a while, some lady found me curled up on the side of the road. She thought I was dead. Cell phones were not a thing yet. So she half lifted me into her car, rode down where she found me, and drove me to the nearest hospital. I could barely speak enough to tell the hospital people my name. I was beaten black and blue by this guy. The hospital knocked me out for about 8 hours with pain meds and muscle relaxers once they were sure I didn't have a head injury. He only hit me in places that it would not show. My roommate did not get home until about a day after I did. She was staying at her boyfriend's dorm room. She probably wouldn't have come home as early as she did, but her parents called at the same time every weekend and she had to be home for that. She was shocked when she saw how beat up I looked. I asked her how she knew that guy and learned that she didn't really. He was just at a party now and then. I wasn't happy with the situation. Or that she let some creep she barely knew drive me somewhere. She felt really guilty, but guys don't advertise that they like to assault girls. She did have some information on the guy though. He didn't live in our city but instead went to a really Christian school with a great law school. He was in law school and was visiting for the party. His dad was a really well-known lawyer for a televangelist church. That was the beginning of what I learned about him. Remember, the internet was in its infancy and social media did not exist. I called some other people who knew him for the party and got some information from them. I learned his girlfriend's name. Then I went to the library and learned about his girlfriend, the church, the law school, the college he was at, and so on. I had photos from the hospital. I had declined to press charges because even then I knew that it would be hard to prove. Even with all the bruises, it would be my word against his. He was from a good family and went to a Christian college and law school. My family was not prominent and I was wearing a skirt that night. At the time, it was normal for lawyers to smear harassment victims based on what they wore, if they had a drink, especially if they were under 21, and so on. I didn't want to have to deal with all of that. I just wanted to ruin his life without having it ruin mine. I got phone numbers for the dean of his law school, the head of the college overall, for his father, for his girlfriend, and for the person who owned his apartment complex. He lived in some fancy apartments owned by a guy who was a big donor to the college. It was for people getting master's or law degrees or medical degrees after they already had bachelor degrees. The apartments were given out as a type of scholarship to the school, and they were supposed to be really nice. I never went there, so I don't really know firsthand what they are like, but I heard about them from this guy's friends. I wore some letters including tear stains that made some of the writing blur a bit. I included copies of the photos of my bruises. I said that I did not want to press charges because I knew it would be an embarrassment to the college, law school, church, and his parents, whichever one fit the person I was writing to. I just thought they ought to know because he could harm a member of their family, congregation, and school. It could also be a huge publicity nightmare if he did this to someone else, and I didn't want that because I believed in their message. Sent it to the church and the school. I called a girlfriend, her number was in the phone book, and told her that her boyfriend harassed me and beat me. And she said that he had beaten her too, but she thought it was her fault. I told her it's not my fault. I was trying not to puke when he attacked me. I told her to stop seeing him and have nothing to do with him if he treated her that way. She said that her family would be upset as he was from such a good family and he was so well thought of at the law school. I did not tell her that I was working on ruining that for him. I sat back and waited for things to happen after I mailed the letters. His family was shocked but not surprised. They wrote me an apology saying he had been in trouble before but they thought he had gotten better after the church intervened in his life. Apparently he hadn't, and they were cutting ties with him. The man who owned the apartments actually called me. He wanted to hear what happened from me so he could figure out if I was still in the truth. So I told him what happened and why I didn't press charges. He believed me and started eviction proceedings. A representative from the church called me to ask me to stop telling lies about the guy. I told him that they shouldn't protect an assaulter and to ask girls he dated how he behaved because his girlfriend told me that he beat her when he got angry. They were shocked. I never heard from the college, but the dean of the law school called me. He asked me if I told the truth and assured him that I had. DNA wasn't commonly used. It was first used in a criminal case that year. So it was my word versus his. Just the accusation was enough to have the guy kicked out of the law school, especially with the photos of my bruises and the tear stains on my letters, which was the reason I wrote them out by hand and let myself cry while I wrote them. Apparently those accepted to that law school should be above reproach. I don't know if they would have handled it the same way if I tried to prosecute the guy, but since I was trying to keep it quiet so I didn't harm the school's reputation, it meant I was a good Christian girl Who could be believed? I was actually surprised that the letters had so much success. I expected his father to send a letter telling me to stop slandering/libeling his son. The letter saying they were cutting all ties to him was a surprise, but a good one. Sadly, it indicated that I was probably not the first to accuse him. About a year later, I found out he was working for a company installing carpet in homes. I called that company and told him that they were sending an abusive jerk into people's homes. I even offered to send photos of the bruises if they wanted them. The woman that I spoke to was horrified. Just the idea that he had been accused of harassment and assault that I cared enough to call when I learned he was going into people's homes was enough for her. I learned that not only did the company fire him, they called other companies and told him what a liability he would be if they hired him. He had started to drink heavily by that point, at least according to the friends who knew him at my school. I went on with my life, got therapy to help me cope, and eventually got married and have had almost 30 years with an amazing husband. I don't know what happened to this guy, but I know he never became a lawyer. His dream. I know that I made his life a lot harder. I did Google him a few years ago, and he has had many arrests and has spent quite a few years behind bars. I like to think that by getting him kicked out of law school and getting his family to understand that he was very much unreformed, I helped speed him into the defendant's chair in a courtroom. Full disclosure. This happened almost 5 years ago, so my memory of this is a little bit fuzzy at times. However, the major player here confirmed that it's accurate enough to get the story across, so I'm going with it. Background. By North American standards, our house is old. It's really old. It's older than a town. Hell, it's older than Confederation. The house was originally built by a merchant from the area like 200 years ago. It's old. With its age comes a very big property line. And apart from a couple adjustments here and there to account for infrastructure and housing development, it is basically unchanged from 100 years ago. It rarely ever comes up here. But in any dispute relating to property lines, the official town plan takes precedence, and our property line crosses over into our neighbor's property. This will be important later. And now for the two major players in this tale. Our jerk neighbor, who we will call Lumpy, is just the worst. He ran an illegal chop shop in his backyard and seemed to be deathly afraid of trees. He also always took a 2-week-long vacation in summer, and it was always at the end of July. This part is also important later. The other one is my dad. At the time, he was in government oversight, but before that, he was in the Department of Justice, and his major responsibilities included trained Crown attorneys. This included the attorneys general. In the pecking order, Dad was actually pretty low, but the Crown knew and respected him, and they were keenly aware that Dad knew the law inside and out. If there was anything even remotely resembling a legal dispute, Dad was almost always in a right with his argument. Now, we begin our tale. The slide. The line between our yard and Lumpy's was pretty clear. Our side was grass, Protestant lilies, shrubs and trees. His was a gravel driveway. Before the incident, there was a large Manitoba maple tree growing there. It was very old but grew in such a way that it blocked just enough sunlight to have a pleasant level of light going through the window. We had no intention of ever removing it, maybe trim it a little bit if it got too close to the windows. However, some lower branches were sagging onto Lumpy's driveway, so he asked if he could cut down some of the lower branches so that his car wouldn't get damaged when he drove in and out. It was a fair enough request. He did ask permission first, so we told him to get a landscaper and a quote, because we sure as hell weren't going to let Lumpy do it, and we're okay paying for it. A couple days later, we were all on a day trip somewhere, and we got back. Lumpy came over and told us not to worry about the landscaper because he took care of it. Red flags were waving at that statement, so we went and checked the tree. And that jerk cut the entire tree down. Then, to add insult to injury, he painted the stump with some sort of weird gray stuff. Don't know what it was, but it had to have been toxic as heck, because nothing ever grew on that stump again. Not even fungi. So we're understandably mad. But unfortunately, there is nothing we can do about it because there is no proof. So now we've got a stump that was once a beautiful tree, a smug neighbor, a seemingly no course of action to take, and Dad did not accept that scenario, and he had a plan. The plan. As I said earlier, Dad knew the law inside and out, so he began to plan things out. He made a few phone calls to the town's civil architect, a couple inspectors, the local landscaper Lumbee was going to get that quote from, and a contractor. He visited City Hall and got a copy of the official town plan, which, remember, is the final word on property lines. He had everything arranged, and now he began to wait. The revenge. Like clockwork, Lumbee went on vacation, and the plan was enacted. Over the course of 2 weeks, we expanded. We rebuilt our fence to new dimensions, rearranged the shrubs, dug up the gravel driveway and put fresh dirt and grass over it, and planted the weeping willow in a spot where, as it grew, would always hang and shed into Lumbee's yard. With the expanded fence and shrubbery, Lumbee's driveway was a small strip of pavement, maybe half a meter wide. The fence placed an old dime maple and a hawthorn on our side, but because of how the two trees grew, most of it was on Lumbee's side. The key point is that the placement of the trunk dictates whose property it's on. So it's our tree that he can't touch, no matter how annoying or destructive it is. With the new dimensions, the chop shop he was running was now on our side of the fence. But because it was illegal, it was just scrap metal as far as the law was concerned. So we sold it to a local scrapyard. By the time Lumbee came back, our yard had expanded almost 3 meters into his yard. Awaiting for him was Dad, the civil architect, and a lawyer with a stack of documents outlining in full detail that what they did was 100% legal, and there wasn't a thing he could do about it. Edit. Not sure how it happened, but it was supposed to say that we told Lumbee to get the quote and that we pay for the landscaper. But we didn't want Lumbee to do it himself. Also, Lumbee tore up part of his lawn and put in a new driveway. He still had room for it, but it also cut his lawn in half, and he had to pay to have the sidewalk adjusted into a ramp. Also, because the town was paying attention now, he had to have it done properly, with asphalt and stuff instead of gravel like before. He's also apparently planning to move out and rent the property to others. Thank you for watching and see you next time.